Each candidate will have exactly 2 minutes to answer a question. The moderator will have the option of posing follow-up questions, and candidates will have 1 minute to respond to follow-up questions. After the end of the first segment, there will be a short break again. And at the end of the event, each presidential candidate shall have 2 minutes to make closing remarks. During the event, each presidential candidate has 3 opportunities for a rebuttal, which will be made within 1 minute. And there should be no applause or noise-making of approval or disapproval during the entire event, except at the end of each round. And at this time, I would have to commend all of you for going by this particular rule, because in the first segment, we realized some decency. We expect that you continue to keep this particular practice as we continue this program. All mobile phones should be turned off. And I repeat on that, all mobile phones should be turned off at this point in time. At no time should the audience take photographs, as this will affect the lighting in the hall. The security can ask persons who do not conform to these rules to leave the hall. At the end of each round, no one should go on to the dais. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start the second segment of tonight's town hall. At this point in time, I now hand you over to our moderator for tonight's town hall, Mr. Samson Ladi Ayinene.
Thank you very much once again, ladies and gentlemen. We come to the second segment of the IEA 2016 Town Hall, and we're coming to you live from the Kimpeski Hotel, Gold Coast City in Accra, and this program is live on Metro Television, Multi-TV Digibox, Joy FM, Joy TV, TV3, First Digital, and TV Africa. And the event is also live on the official IEA Facebook page and the YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, shall we begin the next segment? And in the next segment, we'll take 2 substantive questions on energy, and you'll have 3 minutes each to respond to them. You'll have 2 follow-up questions from civil society, and you'll have 1 minute each to respond to them. And we have a final substantive question on export promotion, your policies. Now, Dr. Edward Mahama, you certainly are aware that we were told in 2015 by the Ghana Employers Association that 13,000 jobs were lost as a result in the first 4 months of 2015 as a result of the energy situation dubbed Doomsor. You may be aware also that electricity demand, as we know now, is between 10 to 12 per annum, 10 to 12% per annum. The question to you is, what are the pragmatic and realistic measures that you will put in place in the short, medium, and long term to provide sustainable power for economic growth?
Thank you. Thank you very much. The problem of Ghana's energy is not necessarily one of installed capacity. Part of the problem is that even what we have installed, we are not getting the maximum out of it. For example, we know that there are 6 turbines in Akosombo, only 2 are working. Sometimes part of it is the fact that we are not able to get fuel to run the thermal generators. And all of this we have traced to the fact that government is spending over its budget and not necessarily spending on areas that are productive. Energy is energy. You can't replace it with anything. Energy drives the whole economy. And so when you have Doomsor, as we have had in the past, you see that businesses collapse. So the short-term or immediate response would be to make sure that we have money to buy the fuel to run the established generating capacity. Also, the PNC administration will negotiate with Burkina Faso. They have put some dams That has reduced the amount of water coming to Akosombo. So Akosombo is not able to generate power from all 6 turbines. We are mostly using 2. So if we generate, and the power that Burkina is getting from the dams that they have put is less than what we can supply them if we are getting power from all 6 turbines. So a negotiation with Burkina will make them release the water, and then we can supply them the power that they need. The other area I know is that we have to have a proper energy mix. That means that we just should not depend on hydro. We should have a proper energy mix. Wind, solar. Solar is very important. In fact, our beloved Komla Dumont, he interviewed a German scientist who said, when he was alive, and I have his contacts, that he can put a solar system in the desert that will supply all of Ghana, Burkina, Nigeria, and Niger. So solar is very important. At the moment, even if we are not looking to that long-term solution, but we give some tax credits to those who are building houses to put solar panels. Solar is also very important because the panels are made out of silica, and we have a lot of it. So it is possible, Ghana, to get into the solar business just to augment what we are producing. Solar.
Thank you, but you have run out of time. Now, Dr. Papa Kosi-Ndum, it is your turn, and the government that you criticize presently and your competitor as having failed in this regard, because you mentioned energy already, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has been touting his record as having in the last 3 years connected as many as 3,000 communities to electricity under his Energy for All program. And in the same way, touts the fact that Ghana produces 76%. Ghana has been bringing the total access to electricity in Ghana to 76%, which is second only to South Africa and in the sub-Saharan Africa. Yet, he says he'll fix the problem. You share the view that he has not fixed the problem, even in the light of these statistics.
Well, that is part of the problem, and it's actually the biggest part of the problem, is political interference in the energy sector and an unrealistic political expectation and so on and so forth. You remember in 2012, it was the same President John Dramani Mahama who said, you elect me, Dumso will be a thing of the past. And then we went through Dumso. And then in the middle of Dumso, just about every other month, he gave another promise. In November, it will be solved. In February, it will be solved. And so the rush to find a solution has led us to a solution that is very costly. And by all standards, it is very costly. So the leadership problem, that leadership problem has led to the mismanagement in the energy sector as well. And it's not because of the energy players. Look, we had Mr. Atuahoy, supported by Dr. Rekrubobi, and then Kandapa, and so on and so forth. They all had good plans and good ideas. But always you had the political players in there. Okay, some going in there because they say energy is where the money is. So they want to do deals to make money. Some other people, they go there and they say that they want to be re-elected. So they want quick and easy solutions. Look, you generate power, you transmit power, you distribute power, then you bill and collect. But what we have done so far is just produce power, generated power, and expensive ones at that. So you haven't fixed the problem. You have solved only one aspect of it, but we have transmission equipment, we have distribution equipment that have been there, some of them since the 1960s, 1970s. And so you need billions of dollars to fix the problem adequately, so you can't promise that you're going to solve it in 6 months. And also what we have in the situation in this country is that the power situation that we have, the demand also is growing. So what I say is that number one, you need a competent political actor who will stand out of the way and allow the technical and professional people to do their work. Number two, let government pay its debts on the one hand, and then avoid accumulating future debt by budgeting appropriately for state institutions to pay for the power that they pay. And then number three is solar. Solar, I have a goal that in 4 years we ought to be able to provide for 10% of our power needs through solar. It is possible, it can be done, it is being done. I've seen an example in Tamale recently, and it is working. So we can solve this problem, but we must solve it without the political part of it.
We have 76% access in the country. We've connected, as the government says, almost 3,000 communities in 3 years. Yet, that is not sufficient. What do you see is the roadmap?
Thank you very much. Energy had to do with the generation and then demand. But in Ghana, the most important thing for us to understand is as to how to conserve energy. And a government policy that intends to actually help with industrialization would have to make sure that the residential tariffs are higher than that of the industry. Now, there are so much wastages in our systems because of, again, the political interference. We have to make sure that the consumers understand the importance of energy and our actions and inactions with regards to its effect on our nation. So what we need to do is that in the short term, we need to go by the energy conservation method. That is the way forward. When the president wanted to bring in car power and Ameri, I wrote a letter to him that it's not going to solve the problem. It's rather going to increase, because the fuel cost alone was going to cost us, in my earlier analysis, was over $7 million. And as a country, we can't afford that. And I suggested, I had a program with the Energy Commission, that we can just switch off our fridges. And we did that experimentation in 2014 during the World Cup. And we could save about 70 megawatts a day. Together with my mates, we brought up a device that can help conserve about 200 megawatts without any cost of it. But the government did not implement it. But as to how, I can't really think far. So the first thing is about the energy conservation and the efficiency to make sure that we reduce. Again, in Ghana, we are moving from the CFL to LEDs, which can again save some amount of energy. In 1994, with my project, I recommended that we actually use the CFL. When the Kufuor administration did that, we managed to save 124. We can again introduce LEDs, and then we'll be able to save that. The next is about the generation mix. Biogas. Biogas can serve a dual purpose of our sanitation problems and at the same time giving us energy. And as a nation, we need to do that. We have one of the experts, in fact, the leading expert in Ghana, he's a Ghanaian, and we are not making use of that. So we need these in order to be able to solve the energy problems that we have. We should also bear in mind it had to do with the ability to pay. Using solar at a higher cost might not necessarily help in industries.
Let's hear your rebuttal.
Did I hear my friend say he can't think far? And he, you know, he knows why his solution was not taken and not implemented, because they are not interested. It doesn't earn anybody money. It is not an elegant political solution. It is telling people to do something that some may not want to do, but that which is necessary. So at some point, we must have leadership. What he wanted to say, I'll tell him. What we need is to have leadership that tells us straightforward what needs to be done, whether it is hurting temporarily on the short term or not. And so we can implement the solutions that we need. So that is what will solve the problem. So let's hit it right on the head. We need leadership that will know the problems and decide to apply the solution that will get rid of those problems.
Thank you. And Mr. Ishmael Ejekumhene, Executive Director of KITE, has a follow-up question that should exact some specifics from all of you gentlemen. Let's hear his question.
Thank you, Samson. Good evening, distinguished candidates. I'm sure, as for energy, I don't need to belabor the point that it's a prerequisite. Everything we need to do revolves around energy. But we also know that access to energy is a function of both availability and affordability. So what we went through during Dumso, we didn't have it. Now we have it. But it's also not affordable, and we're all talking about industrialization. So, for example, when you look at the non-residential customers, their unit cost is so expensive that the Energy Commission has projected in the 2016 Energy Outlook that it's worth their while to be self-generating. So it's better for them, it's cheaper for them to actually use their own generators instead of relying on the grid. Meanwhile, we're talking about industrialization. So we also know that the price of electricity also affects the profitability as well as the competitiveness of all these industries that we're talking about. I would like each of you to tell us how you're going to make electricity affordable to non-residential customers. I'm not talking about residential customers, non-residential customers, without endangering the financial integrity of our power utilities.
Thank you. And that's supposed to be a follow-up. 1 minute each, starting with Dr. Edward Mahama.
To make energy affordable, we need to reduce the price of energy itself and also increase the wages of people. I have a feeling that Ghanaian workers are paid very, very minimal amount, and that is also because productivity is low. To increase the availability of power, we have advocated waste to energy to add more, because we are a nation that is said to be the 7th dirtiest nation in the world. So it means we have the resource, the garbage, to generate the power. And if we are generating power from the garbage we are producing, it cannot be that expensive. So for me, waste to energy is one way, improving the wages of people so that they'll have ability to pay. And these are two areas that I would look at. That's why we're talking of unemployment. These unemployed people cannot pay anything, but they also use power. So when you give them employment, they're in a position to pay their bills.
Thank you. Dr. Papa Kusi Ndum, you've been a former minister in this sector before.
Well, to reduce the costs of power to the non-domestic user, in the short term, it will be tough because the Mahama administration has socked us with high taxes and also high costs, the generation facilities that come at a high cost. So that you cannot just go and get rid of them. Otherwise, you get into those, I forget what they call them, the problem of litigation for people to come and say that you have unnecessarily abrogated their contract. So we are stuck with those things. So the first thing that you can do, and perhaps the only thing you can do in the very short term, is to reduce the tax element. If you reduce the tax element, the cost will go down for them. The second thing that you can do is to give them tax incentives so they can go to solar and other off-grid solutions.
Thank you. Mr. Jacob Osebo.
First and foremost, our tariffs are not competitive from the generation companies. If you compare ours, even with our neighboring countries and the rest, as to how we arrive at those figures, it's only heavens that knows. And I think that most of the time, we have to make sure that we do a bit of due diligence in arriving at realistic tariffs that are competitive. Second, for us to allow industries to subsidize residential tariffs shouldn't be the way forward. If you move on to the Southern African countries, we rather have residential tariffs higher than industrial. And that alone inculcates the habit of energy conservation into consumers. And so we need to take bold political and deliberate policy in ensuring that we do that. Again, waste to energy will also ensure that we can reduce our level.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. The next substantive question I see to civil society, I see to Dr. Ishmael Aka, who is head of policy unit and energy policy advisor at ASAP. He's asking you the next substantive question. If there are any follow-ups, I will do so. Dr. Ishmael Aka.
Thank you very much. Well, we know that financial sustainability of the utility companies is key to addressing the power crisis we had. In fact, the financial sustainability of VRA, of ECG, and other utility companies. Now, VRA controls about 66% of our installed capacity. However, VRA owes about $1.5 billion. The old Ghana Gas, they cannot pay. The old banks, they cannot even take loans. If you are elected, what reforms are you going to introduce into VRA to make it, one, financially viable, and two, efficient, so that the power sector will not collapse? Thank you.
And this time we start with Jacob Osei-Yeboah.
Thank you very much. And that is why we should learn as to how to pay for the electricity that we consume realistically. If we fail to do that as a nation, we'll find it very difficult to move forward. And so we need to pay realistically for the energy that we consume. The policy of our governments for industries to subsidize that will not actually help. Again, the VRA and ECG themselves will have to also ensure that they operate at optimal efficiency. We cannot have a situation whereby we have losses over 40%. And so when you look at the level of generation of 1,000, and then you have losses over 40%, then it means that around 400 is going waste through management, through theft, and through high procurement, and so on and so forth. So they themselves need to also ensure that they look inwardly and become more efficient comparatively to other generation authorities in other countries. By so doing, they will be in a position to really serve us better. First, they themselves must be efficient. The government will have to make sure that we pay realistic tariffs, and that is the only way that we can move forward. But with regards to the debts already piled up, I think we need, as a nation, we need a deliberate policy, because as at now, it will be very difficult for us to say that we really want to come, we really want to have a means of recouping that, because they themselves, they have to pay for their debts. What I think we need to do is, again, for the government to ensure that all the debts that they owe VRA, they pay VRA, so that VRA will become more autonomous and be able to invest in it. What I've also taken notice is that it will take just a little amount to invest in the efficiencies. If we manage to do that, we can save a lot of money, and then we can have a higher generation for our consumers. And also, the VRA should not look onto the existing generation alone. One of the most important things is that we can now, there's a technology for us to generate hydropower, which is relatively cheaper, without constructing dams. And so before and after the Akosombo Dam, we can install these generation machines, which can also help boost. And most of our rivers can also enjoy that. So they ought to also ensure that they look outward. We can use pet coke also to reduce the cost. So it's the generation mix that they need to look at as well.
My follow-up question to you will be, you are talking about how to make the VRA efficient and financially viable. And you insist that we ought to pay realistic tariffs. Though presently, there is general complaint about the cost of electricity, especially for the non-commercial user. So a Jacob Osei Yeboah regime will see even higher tariffs?
Necessarily. Not necessarily. The most important thing, as I was saying, is that if they are efficient, there are a lot of corruption going on in VRA through procurement, and that also increases their cost of or sources of input, and that is what I'm talking about. If as a nation...
No, sorry, my question is that you say we are not paying realistic tariffs, and that's what we ought to pay. That's number one.
Yes, that is the first one. The government shouldn't interfere, okay? Because at the moment, what is happening is that the industries are rather now subsidizing the residential. And it's not going to help us as a nation if we really want to move forward. And so if you're able to deal with these things, it's very important with regards to the generation, in the sense that there's no need for us to generate 1,000 whilst 400 is going waste. And the cost of generating 400,000, let's say 400
Thank you.
megawatts.
You've exhausted your minute. You've exhausted your minute, and we need to take the response from Dr. Papakwesi Indum about the financial viability and efficiency of the VRA, which owes $1.5 billion.
The question we need to ask is, how did that debt come about? Because VRA was not always in debt. When VRA was exporting power, VRA was making money. But when the exportation of power ceased, well, what happened is now the power was being sent to ECG. ECG was distributing power, and government, as the biggest consumer, was not paying them. So ECG is also owing VRA. So it's not the inefficiency of VRA that had caused the problem. We must understand the source of the problem if we are going to solve it. So if it's indeed this same government that has put that problem there, then we must find a way to take that problem off the table of VRA and solve it. And that would take, I was going to use the word financial engineering, but financial engineering has caused some problem in Ghana that we all know about. So we need to find a good financial solution that will not overburden the consumer once again. So this is that issue, that is the huge issue on the energy sector that must be solved. And it will not be solved with a political solution. Those professional politicians must stand aside, and let's get financial experts and the technical experts to get together to figure out how do we solve that problem, and the right kind of leadership on top to ensure that no professional or politician interferes. Nobody who wants to make unnecessary money without sweating for it gets close to the action, and so we find a solution. And I believe that that solution can be found. I've been there before, and I know that it can be done. So you do that one matter, that it goes away. But now, ECG is not the only one who produces power in the country. There are others from the private sector and so on and so forth. But then there are offtake agreements that are sort of historic offtake agreements that VRA needs to comply with. So we need to figure out how do we get rid of that burden of VRA. So you understand that this is not a matter that you can go and stand on a political platform and say that doing so will be a thing of the past just like that. You need to have people sit down and come up with solutions, and whether the solution is politically elegant or popular or not, then you find the courage to get it implemented. I believe the problem of VRA can be solved. It can be solved, and it can be solved not easily, but it can be solved with diligent leadership.
You have a minute.
Okay. So if that is indeed the case, then I am saying to you that if you look at how we have appointed the heads of VRA, the people who are supposed to lead, every time somebody comes, they remove whoever is there, and they bring someone who is politically acceptable. So that is part of the political interference in what has been going on, and I'm still, because I have been there, I can tell you confidently that there are people who have been, I'm using the word interference, but I want to use it again, interfering for private profit, political actors, and their private sector collaborators who have been doing this at our expense and is ending us to where we are. And so we must have the courage as leaders, and the leader of the country, the president, and with me, Papa Kwesi Nkrumah, as the president, I will have the courage and the knowledge to plug that hole and make sure that we don't go down that negative route again.
Thank you. And the follow-up question to you will be, forgive me if I didn't get as much clarity from you as possible as far as that question is concerned. Are you making a commitment to reduce tariffs, make it affordable, and second, still pay VRA's debts? That's the question.
Yes,
How?
Yes, I've been saying over and over and over that yes, we do have money in Ghana, but it is being handed over left and right to all sorts of different people. And those funds that we have, once we are able to get our hands on the money not wasted, we will have money and not have to go through the route of overtaxing the people to solve the debt problem that is there. And we must understand that this hanging debt on our necks in every sector of the economy, it's not just on energy. It is in many other areas. Infrastructure that we are building and not knowing where the money will come from to pay for. It's all going to stand there, and it will affect the president coming, which I hope to be. And so I'm looking at the debt burden as a huge matter that I will need to find good financial experts who are non-political to sit there and let's figure out how do we resolve this matter and resolve it well.
Dr. Edward Mahama, how do you propose to pay the humongous debt and still keep VRA sufficient whilst reducing tariffs?
Thank you. The problem with VRA, as I understand it, is actually corruption. I say this because political interference that allows VRA to absorb debt, even from private energy producers, because I've been reliably informed that gas meant for VRA, for its thermal plants, sometimes is diverted somewhere else for political reasons. Secondly, VRA and ECG and GRIDCO, all these are agencies that are very inefficient. So if you talk to VRA, they say, oh, ECG owes us. And if you talk to ECG, and ECG says government owes us. So the debt keeps circling around. You don't know actually where it starts. But it starts with the corruption that is introduced into the system and the inefficiency. For example, ECG, they don't send their bills regularly to even private consumers. So I can understand even how the government debt comes about. So ECG is taking power from VRA, is not efficient in collecting debt, so they cannot pay VRA. VRA goes to the banks and borrows money to buy its inputs, and VRA cannot pay. It's a vicious cycle. And one has to take a bold step in saying, look, VRA, we will pay this debt for you, by making sure that every government institution is paying ECG, so that ECG doesn't have to owe VRA all the money they owe. And VRA itself has to become efficient and stop wasting government money, because you see VRA, their employees, and ECG, their employees, they're the better paid people in Ghana, yet they're not efficient. So if you are paying them to be productive, fine. But we pay them and they are not productive. The same thing happened with TOR. All these energy sectors are all interlinked, and it's the corruption that is the main thing that I see. So if you can plug the corruption in these agencies, VRA will be able to recover. And as I said before, if we can get VRA to use all 6 turbines, it'll be producing more energy, and maybe instead of importing energy from Cote d'Ivoire, we will now export. And once we are exporting energy from VRA, we should be able to do well with paying its debts. So productivity is one of the key areas for VRA to get out of its debt.
Thank you very much. And your very final question for all of you is what your export promotion policy will be. What will you do to ensure that Ghana's exports, which are mainly in its raw state, enjoy value addition to offset any fluctuations in world commodity prices? And that will start with Dr. Papakwesi.
Let me be very clear. I am not interested in this raw material export business. Just simply not interested. The converse of it is that I'm also not interested in this no-holds-bar importation of any and everything that someone wants to bring to Ghana. So what's my solution? My solution is this, is that what it is that we produce in Ghana. Let me start with the very basic fundamentals. Yam. Why should I want to go and do non-traditional export of yam? I want to process the yam into yam chips, just like in Ghana we now eat potato chips. Yam chips, I have priced the cost of a factory to produce yam chips, and you can have yam chip production factories in Brongahafo in the northern region, and it is feasible and it can be done. If it is maize, we shouldn't just go to Nika every now and then. We can have the processing factories that I lived in a small town, less than 2,000 people in the US, and because they are corn growing people in that community, they had two corn processing factories there. Whatever the farmer produces is bought, and therefore we solve the problem of having a market. And when they have a surplus, then they ship those surpluses to us. And when there's even a surplus in terms of the raw material, the American government buys it, stores it, and when we Africans become poorer and we have difficulties, that's what they send to us as aid. And so what I'm saying is that all that we need to do is emulate the good examples that happen and are happening in many parts of the country. So we process the rice properly. We process the maize properly. We process the yam properly. We feed ourselves first. Then we export. As we are feeding ourselves, we are preventing ourselves from importing. And we are keeping the monies right here in our own pockets. And it can be done. And I'm talking from practical experience, because we have done some of this experimentation in different parts of the country with different products, and they are working, and the farmers are happy. Now, we're doing this just on a small scale, with just a small money that is in our pockets. Now, with the government's purchasing power, imagine what we can do, So when we say export, I'm saying my priority is not exporting anything in its raw form. My priority is processing what we have, using state's purchasing power to provide a market in Ghana, and the state's authority to prevent the things that are being dumped here from coming. And we will do better as an economy.
Dr. Edward Mahama, your response to the same question.
Yes, thank you very much. I have said, for example, that since the Tekwashi brought the cocoa bean here, we are still carrying it in that form to the port. You can see them. It's a shame. I have said, as president, every Ghanaian child is going to have a cup of chocolate at the break. So we start to consume some of that cocoa. When we do that, the amount of even raw cocoa available on the world market will reduce. Supply and demand. So basically, right from us introducing a cup of chocolate for all Ghanaian school children, you'll see that the price we'll get for the cocoa that is left to be exported will improve. I was in Bechim campaigning, and one morning, the young men of the town came and said, "We want jobs." So I asked them, "Your fathers are cocoa producers. Any cocoa processing factory here?" "No." "We have some gold in the area. Any gold processing or refining factory here?" "No." I've already indicated that as president, I'm going to make sure that we have gold refinery to produce the Ya Asantua gold coin, so that every Ghanaian going abroad, you can put a few of those gold coins in your pocket. No one will stop you at Heathrow or JF Kennedy and search you for cocaine or marijuana. And you can walk into a shop with your gold coins and actually get money for it. That is how you begin to industrialize. That is how you begin to reduce your exportation of raw materials. I have talked about, with some friends of mine who are into the cocoa, maize farming, there is no reason why we cannot start a commodities market. It does so many things. It provides market for the producers, and also there is help from that market to the farmers by way of guaranteed prices and by way of farm imports. So if we start to add value, and this is where I'm thinking of reducing the unemployment, especially among the youth. As I've already said, if you produce rice, it has to be milled, it has to be polished, it has to be bagged. So basically, by adding value by these processes, you create jobs and you also export finished product. In 1976, we were exporting rice and we're also exporting maize. Today, we cannot even feed ourselves. We have to import. So I come back to the major issue that I see about our nation, productivity. And when you have produced, you have to add value to it. We shouldn't continue to export gold the way we did 500 years ago. Neither should we do that with cocoa.
Mr. Jacob Osayabwa, same question to you.
There are many facets when it comes to exporting. You need to look at, if you want to add value, you need to look at the cost of transforming the raw material into the added goods. Here we are in Ghana now. We are now even importing onions from Burkina Faso. And so you ask, where do we sit as a nation? Before, we also need to look at the country-specific advantages. And that is why always we have to make sure that we industrialize from the natural resources that we have. If we can actually industrialize from that, then as a nation, we'll become more competitive if we want to export. Again, if part of our sources of input is actually imported, in order for us to be able to transform even the raw materials that we have, then sometimes it could be even cheaper for you to import than exporting. And that is why we have this phenomenon of offshoring, something which also affected the developed countries. Like US, they can design everything, but they have to go to China and manufacture it because the cost of labor and input over there is so high. So as a nation, we need to make sure that we take a detailed analysis of it, look at those products that we can actually add value to it competitively, something that we can create inwardly. Because if we cannot add value and become more competitive, there's not going to be market for your product out there in the world. And so we have to make sure and do detailed analysis of the cost of transforming our raw materials. And again, when we look inwards, we'll be able to come out with export policies and know those items, those products that we can actually export competitively and know those that we can import. And that is why there's always a trade balance that you need to look at. But it's up to the experts for us to sit down and make sure that can we actually transform even our cocoa into chocolate cheaper than what the US can actually export to us. These are the fundamental questions that as a country we need to look at and make sure that we'll be able to beat it downwards, and then we can have a proper export policy of those materials that we can actually export. We need to look at technology. We don't have most of this technology with us, and the costs of these technologies are with the other economies out there. And that is why we need to take a very critical look at all of these and make sure that where can we add value competitively into the world.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. You have 2 minutes each to give us your very closing remarks. And I start with you, Mr. Jacob Osei-Ebuah. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Ghana. It's been a privilege for the IEA organizing this town hall encounter. It was rather unfortunate that my spirit was a bit down because of the fact that we do not have the president or the government with us, and then the largest opposition also with us. And because of that, it was very difficult coming out with those issues. But as a nation, we need to take a very critical look at where we are heading towards. I believe that all-inclusive governance is something that can help us move forward. Corruption, as we've been talking about, we need to rather strengthen our institutions in dealing with corruption. Because Ghana, we've even gone to the extent of giving people firing squad because of 50 cities. But yet, corruption has grown from Kalabule to Gangantuan. And so there's the need for us as a nation to really sit down and critically strengthen our institutions. As a nation, we also have to make sure that critically we will industrialize based on the natural resources that we have. By so doing, we'll be able to create a lot of employment for our teeming youth. The ethnicity that some politicians are capitalizing on in order to polarize that, we can look at it from business point of view, okay, and create jobs out of that through tourism, which can actually help us to rather learn about one another's culture and tradition in order to create wealth through tourism rather than trying to destroy one another. It's very important as a nation at this point in time. We don't know what lies ahead of us, whether we are going to destroy ourselves because of these two political parties. Let's vote them out. Thank you.
Dr. Papa Kwesi Indum, speak directly to the nation.
I have been elected by my political party, the Progressive People's Party, to apply for the job of President of the Republic of Ghana. And there is someone there right now. And that person has been there for the past 8 years supervising the economy and mismanaging it. High debt, doomsor, unemployment, our people not passing their BEC examination, and so on and so on. So the point is that we need a change. And I am asking Ghanaians to give us the opportunity to solve this problem that is there. And the solution that we are putting on the table, we will unite the country so that through unity we will have peace to have development. We'll use inclusiveness, get the best people regardless of religion, ethnicity, or political party affiliation so we can solve the problems that we have. And we will use the state's purchasing power to encourage our own to have a market in Ghana, and use the authority of the state to prevent dumping of goods and services into our country that deprive our people of jobs. And 53% or more of Ghanaians are into farming. So we will not just say we're going to mechanize. We'll provide the farmers with a market. I have already talked about the rice farmers, the yam farmers, and so on and so forth. We will do that, but we will do all of it by also solving the problem of corruption so that we save money, so that we don't overburden our people with taxes. And what I am saying is that by the grace of God, Papa Kwesindom, I've been able to do something through education and hard work. I want to put that experience to work for the benefit of millions of Ghanaians.
Dr. Edward Mahama, let's hear your message.
As I always keep saying, good and visionary leadership, coupled with discipline, integrity, honesty, will be the underpinning pillars of my leadership or presidency. I have come to you before. In fact, this is my 5th time. And even though I haven't won, Ghana has benefited from my participation in these elections. National health insurance, school feeding, Get Fund. I come this time saying, I contested with J.J. Rawlings 1996 and J. Kufuor. You told me to be patient, and you gave it to J.J. Rawlings. I was patient. In 2000, you told me to be patient. I was patient. You gave it to Kufuor. Of the 3 people that God chose in 1996 to start this 4th Republic, I'm the only one you have not yet tried. Now, you've tried the rest. Now try the best. And I'm offering you, in fact, my candidature has already been approved by the Big 6. I am number 6. My candidature has been approved by the rest of the country. We got our independence 6th March 1957. I am number 6. God completed creating everything he was going to create in 6 days. I'm number 6. When you go to the polls December 7th, remember, when you vote the number 6, when you vote for Edward Mahama, you are doing God's will. When you vote Edward Mahama, remember, you are completing the independence of Ghana, because Nkrumah got you political independence. I'm bringing you economic independence. Number 6, voting day December 7th, that's what releases you from the bondage of political independence into economic freedom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for all of them. Shall we put it up for them? Let's acknowledge all of them. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Dr. Edward Mahama of the PNC. Thank you, Dr. Papa Kwesi Indum of the PPP, and Jacob Osei-Yeboah, the independent presidential candidate. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for also being here at the Kimpeski Hotel, Gold Coast City in Accra for the IEA 2016 Presidential Town Hall Interactions. And we've been live on Metro Television, Multi TV, Joy FM, Joy TV, TV3, First Digital TV, and TV Africa. We've also been streaming on the IEA official Facebook page and YouTube channel. Thank you once again, and a round of applause for yourselves as we welcome the IEA for the closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Samson Ladi. We would also have to say a big thank you to KNET for transmitting the entire event. KNET, we have to say thank you, finally, for helping us transmit this event everywhere. May I now invite Dr. Michael Ofori-Mensah, Senior Research Fellow of the Institute of Economic Affairs, to deliver the closing remarks.